Okay, so when it comes to conversion optimization, there's a lot of focus on the entire process from start to finish, and there's a lot that goes into conversion optimization. But if you want to just fix one thing and increase your conversions by as much as possible by just doing one thing, I think the best approach might be to fix your forms because that's the actual conversion point. You actually need people to fill out the form and submit it to get a conversion. So it's important to have both a copywriter content perspective, which is what I'm bringing, and a design perspective to make sure you create the best forms. So that's why we have Nick, our designer, on the podcast today. Thanks for coming on, Nick.
Thank you for taking your time to prepare the questions for this beautiful podcast and for inviting me.
Oh, of course. So, can you talk a little bit about um, why forms are so important uh, for conversions and for getting people to engage with the page?
Oh, uh, you sometimes fill in some forms on website. So if you think about it, it's very important that that experience is super quick, easy, and clear for you. So people usually make, or some people, some websites make mistakes. And if the form is a way you expect people to contact you, then you really need to think through about copywriting or strategy part. You need to be clear what this form is about. Well, some people would probably think like, yeah, it's just a form. Uh, but let's say if you're having a lot of visitors on your website and a bad form, and then you probably waste a lot of resources. You waste a lot of possible good leads because there are forms that are pretty long. There are forms that are using some bad practices. So it's very important that at least do the basic stuff, and not every website has the basic stuff covered.
Yeah, I've noticed a lot of websites, including, big websites with a lot of traffic from big brands. Like, the main thing they'll be trying to get people to do is to, like, fill in and submit a form to, like, request a meeting or something like that. But the headline is just like contact us, and the form is just like totally generic, and a lot of times it has too many fields. It's like it's so important, but people overlook, I think, both the message and the actual design of the form. Like from a copyright perspective, just contact us. No one's even gonna like, that's not even gonna like make an impact. It needs to be like, get expert guidance or, something that actually
Yep. Well,
engages people, yeah, and tries to persuade them to actually fill out the form.
if I really, really want to buy something, then I don't care about some small details. But usually, you're not sure. You're checking competitors.
Yeah.
You're checking other stuff. So probably you want to be clear about what should people expect when they submit the form. So what's the next step? Or well, there's a lot of details when it comes to form design, and usually it's not just a contact us form. Sometimes you want to sign up for a service, and then we want to take as much details as we can, because there are always two sides. If you're connecting a customer with sales team, so you want this person from sales team to be prepared for the initial call, or if they're just gonna do email conversation. But then in the other hand, you don't want to frighten the time poor customer. So usually you're trying to minimize the effort for the customers while you get the most out of it. But yeah, you need to keep in mind how to use labels on the form. It states like probably if you some or most of the websites are already using some plugins for forms or something like that. So usually when you plug in your forms, you already have the states.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a lot. Some helper text, notes.
Mm.
You need to mark your mandatory fields. Then you need to, well, you really need to think about what you need, what you really need, and what you don't need. So probably there is like an what you should never follow like raw data and numbers, but there's like golden rule, or I'm not even sure how do people call it, but like seven fields or something around that is sweet spot. Why? Because if you go over, well, and as I say, it's not usually seven fields. If you need eight, you should probably use eight, or if you need five. But that's something what I look for when we're creating the forms, because you really want to take into consideration what you really need and what's something that you think you need, because people don't have that much attention. And imagine if you need to fill in something, then you need some data you need to check somewhere or something like that. Then there is a chance you lose the lead for something you could ask him like on a meeting in a couple of days. So, and then of course you cannot always limit the forms to seven fields or less. Then you need to think about probably dividing form into a couple of steps. So we sometimes create multi-step forms. Then you really need to pay attention to have some tracker for progress. Then probably people should know if they're gonna fill in some longer form that they will need a couple of minutes, a couple more minutes, or let's say 5 minutes to fill in the form. Probably you really want to make users feel like it's easy to submit, not just start and then it's 20 fields and then probably sometimes someone's gonna give up, someone's gonna have some internet problems, attention problems. Well, there's a lot. So, and of course, in the other hand, you don't want to create just one field. You really want quality leads. So sometimes if you're having a lot of leads and then you want to make them a bit more, let's say not a bit more, but quality leads, then you probably add a couple more fields and then you get a bit more specific leads, because people that are just casuals are just gonna drop off. No one's gonna, something like that. But
Yeah,
yeah, there's a lot more into it. It really depends on that, the best. And when we work on the projects together, then it's not that easy to agree on goal of the form, fields, details we need. So we usually have discussions. Someone from copy team will probably want a bit more fields, then I would want a bit less fields, then we'll find something in between.
yeah. So I think basically you want to figure out exactly the fields that you definitely need, and then try not to, you have to include those, but try not to include any fields that you don't absolutely need. Because I think first, like, I know this is more of like a design thing. You want to make sure that when people just like glance at the form before they actually start filling it out, that it looks super easy to fill out. Because otherwise, they won't even like get started. And when they're actually doing it, you want to make it feel easy. So yeah, that's why it's like you said, seven fields. You don't really want to go much above that, and if you do have to have more than that, it's good to have like a multi-stage form with a progress bar, so it still feels really easy, right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Another thing that I know you've called me out on this a couple times, is that like below the headline, I think you might call it helper text or explainer text. Sometimes I'll write like 100 words. It'll just be a big block of text, and that'll keep people from even starting the form in the first place. So you got to keep in mind people have a short attention span and they want things to feel as easy as possible.
Yeah, we really want people usually try a lot more than they should. I mean, in that context, that you will try to make something sound beautiful, and it will sound beautiful, but then there is a form and there is a big block of text that's gonna explain something a bit more complex than it should. So probably keep it simple. And this is like some tips and tricks. Probably you need to go a bit more in depth, because sometimes fixing your forms can, I mean, most of the times, if you fix your form, you're gonna earn more money. As simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. Because the form, is the actual point of conversion where, someone who it becomes like a lead, right? So it's worth it even to try and test out small changes to the form. So as far we've covered, like you should have as few fields as possible. Should try to make it as easy as possible. But in terms of just pure design, like how would you use different colors and different fonts and the spacing and stuff to try and get people's attention and
Yeah, easy to click input boxes. Uh, there are standard sizes, like you have a paragraph text and you should have padding around. You need to have big button, clickable button. Uh, the most important is going to be some basic design rules. And if you have longer form, you need to make sure you don't put label inside the input box, because if I click on that, write something down, then you will lose your label on top. I mean, you will lose your label if it's not on top. So usually when the forms are longer, we try to put uh, input box description or label on top. And then if you click on the input field, write something down. If you come back to that, you will always see the label on top. You will know what's that field about. So as far as that goes, like from design point of view, uh, just like basic design rules, contrast, you really want to make sure you have active state, and then there's a lot more, let's say, complex things like if you have to add a state, you really feel what's better quality form when you fill in some form on some big brand or big websites. You really know when it's easy for you when you start typing, and it's gonna auto populate, it's gonna suggest you, you're gonna see the drop down with flags. When you click flag, it's gonna pre-format your phone number, like first three or four numbers. So some small details. It's not a form, but when you're creating a password, it's not that kind of form we're talking now, but that's the feeling you want to get. Like auto validation password, when you're filling in the password, it's red, red, red. When you do all the conditions, then it's gonna turn out green. So some small details that you don't even realize, but then you're not lost. Then of course, if you submit something wrong, like scenario, I submit a wrong form. There are two cases. If I have some errors with my field, it's very nice that you have highlighted field with error and then explain what you did wrong. And there is another case when I fill in the form and then everything is red or nothing is red, and it says like your form is not good or something like that. So then you need to go and see like, what I did wrong. So all of these are small details, but in fact, you are more professional. It's like in personal conversation in a store. I really, that would be something like if you don't do something and we're communicating as people, you just wanna, if I make a mistake, I want to hear some details from you. And you would go and say, you made a mistake. So the forms are pretty much part of your team. Yeah, they are the forms, but you really need to make sure the form is clear, the next step is clear, some basic design rules. Of course, sometimes you want to have like a thank you page after the form. Of course, the form is also important, not just for that specific lead. Sometimes we want to create some other forms that are not going to be inquiry forms. Sometimes you want to download something from website. So there is a lot of ways and a lot of forms and a lot of purpose we can use them for, but the rules apply to all of them. You really need to think through everything. And then in the other hand, if you have a website with some forms, go ask your friends. Super basic stuff. What I do with my designs a lot of times, I'm gonna ask some friends. I'm gonna ask people that are just not from the industry and say like, what do you see? You can pass your form to someone and say like, is it clear? How easy it was for you to fill in?
yeah,
It's not that
that's
hard to do. That's like not ideal scenario of testing, but it's good free way of testing.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do like the initial testing is just to ask some people you know whether the form makes sense and it's easy to fill out and stuff, and then maybe you can make a few changes based on the feedback, and then do like a full A/B test. But
Of course, yeah.
it's definitely important to do the testing because as we were talking about, just like one small change to a form can actually have a big impact on how many people submit the form, and that's how many people submit the form. That's how many leads you actually get, right? So
You create an emotion. Sorry for interrupting.
no, go ahead.
Uh, you create emotions as brand. Like if you're a big brand, or as I had a couple of examples when I want to reach out to some service provider and something is not working well. My emotion towards that brand is, you know, I don't trust them anymore, or probably I'm frustrated. Maybe I needed something. So that works, or that's for every aspect of your website. It's not just what you're gonna get. It's what you can lose also if you're just not you're underperforming. And if I want to submit the form and then something is not working well and your website is slow or whatever, it's it's just just my emotion towards your brand. And whenever I see whatever I see from your brand, it's not gonna be good. So you really want to build your brand in every possible way. So usually people don't think from that perspective, like it's just a form. But if someone tries to reach out to you and then they fail because your form is too long, too whatever, any of the reasons we mentioned before, then you fail.
Yeah, like a bad user experience like that. It's not just a bad form, it actually hurts like the image of your brand.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't really think about that, and even if they do, a lot of times they just like try and make the form good on PC but not on mobile. So I guess say someone's trying to optimize a form so that someone on their smartphone can fill it out easily. Like, what are some tips you would give to like optimize the form for mobile?
You need to make sure someone can use their finger or thumb to click on them. I mean, sometimes the form are too small. The spacing between the fields is not that good. So probably some similar rules to desktop and mobile. But yeah, I would be frustrated if when I click, I cannot click. Sometimes it happens that just the form is not that big. The field is not that big. Of course, you really need to think if your form is very long, 20 fields on mobile, infinite scroll form, then you need to go back. And then if you don't have label, then you don't know if you added something you need to check. Imagine the frustration if you're filling the form on mobile, and if it's a very bad, very long form, and then you made one mistake. Sometimes, probably, I'm not sure if it happens today, but sometimes when you have an error, it happens that just everything you need to start over. Or even if you don't, if you need to manually go and find your mistake or error you made. So there's a lot, and especially those things are notable on mobile. And people, most of the users are from mobile anyways. So you need
Yeah,
to pay
that's
attention
true.
to that, especially.
Yeah, I mean, most of the form plugins they do have like mobile optimized versions, but they don't always work. You need to test them to make sure they work. I also think for mobile, you got to make sure like the maybe the fields are a bit bigger so you can easily tap on them, and maybe use more like multi-step forms because it's really annoying to have to tap on like 20 different fields, when you're on your smartphone or whatever. So yeah, and it's like I said, like 58% or something of traffic is mobile these days. So, but yet mobile optimization is like an afterthought for a lot of businesses when they're putting their forms together. It's just like really thorough testing and tweaking can be kind of a pain, but it's definitely worth it in the end for your conversion rates.
Yeah, definitely. And probably sometimes people just assume we create a good website and here we're just gonna put a form. and
Yeah.
that's it. Usually, you would just assume that the forms are really intuitive and everyone knows how to submit the form. And indeed, yes, that's the case. But when you just take a look a bit more and consider every aspect of every user that's going to be on your website and every scenario, device. So, yeah, probably you need to invest a bit more time into the forms.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely worth investing a lot of time, a lot of time into the forums, especially if they're your main conversion points. Some people like it's kind of like an afterthought, like we've been talking about, but even just the small changes are important. And, people not only will they overlook sometimes, you know, they won't write new copy. They will just go with the standard design. There's also some other stuff like I know a little bit about cybersecurity and development, and I know like there are some hacks that you can do through forums, and like you can get a lot of spam through forums, so you have to make sure you have like a captcha and all that stuff set up, or you're just gonna get like a ton of spam and stuff.
Yeah.
So in the end, basically, it's worth spending a lot of time optimizing your form, but because there are so many different aspects that go into it, it's best to hire the professionals who have a team of writers, designers, and developers who can work on the form. To that end, JMarketing offers a comprehensive $995 digital marketing audit where we will examine everything on your website and all of your marketing operations, including your forms. So go ahead and go on our website and sign up for that. Thanks for listening, and thanks for coming on the podcast today, Nick.
Thank you. Have a nice day.